Good morning. This is a brilliant sunny morning in the state of Washington. We have been waiting 134 years for a foreign leader to address the state legislature, and now it is a tremendous honor that President Niinistö of Finland has joined us. I was so taken by his comments to the legislature. They affected me in several ways. One, he did us our great honor, Mr. President, and he described us as a forerunner nation along with the forerunner nation of Finland. That was a huge honor. Thank you, Mr. President. We are so glad he is here. I wanted to honor the President of Finland in the most important way that I could, that the people of Finland would understand. The governor last weekend got a sauna at his home on Bainbridge Island. So we wanted to show our respect for the people of Finland in that regard. We're glad you're here, Mr. President. We're appreciative of Dr. Jenny Haukea, your bride, who just got her doctorate. And the President told me that she has written a book about the influence of social media and politics. I am going to be the first person to buy that book because we want some answers about that. We are so excited that the first foreign leader to address the legislature is from Finland because of the incredible contributions of the people of Finland to the state of Washington, starting with the thousands of people of Finnish ancestry who helped build our state even before the turn of the century, who came from Finland and taught us to fish and log and build businesses, and who today are continuing to be a very important part of our culture. We think of the town of Näsel that has so many folks of Finnish ancestry, that has the famous Finnfest. Perhaps you can come to the Finnfest someday, that attracts thousands to enjoy our schottish dance and our glass of sima. So I hope perhaps on your next visit you can join us in this regard. It is something that is unique, and I was just talking to the President about this. We think we have the best culture, political and otherwise, in the United States in our state. And it is because, largely, I believe, because of our Nordic heritage. And the fact that Finland gave us so many leaders to help build our state is very meaningful to us. And we're very appreciative of that continuing work. The other thing that the President said in his speech, which I was taken by, he said that something to the effect that crisis unites us. That when people are in crisis, they come together and they understand their commonality, their common roots, their common efforts. And we have two crises right now that very much has united the state of Washington with Finland. One being the climate crisis. And we are so appreciative of the people of Finland's effort to decarbonize their economy and helping decarbonize the world economy. And when we were in Finland a few months ago, we saw Finnish efforts to do that. I learned some new technologies in Finland of new ways to capture waste energy from actually wastewater, that the Finns are capturing wastewater energy heat and then putting it back in their way to warm their domestic water. Amazing new technology. We had discussions about how to power ships with hydrogen, so that we don't have to do with dirty bunker fuel, and we learn companies are doing that. We've talked to Nokia, which is leading in the digitization of ports and eventually the use of our electricity and grid. So Finland is really leading in the development of technology to really defeat climate change, and we feel very much a kinship with Finland in this regard, because Washington State is a leading state in this regard. I shared with the President the good news in our state that we have the best cap and invest bill that just went into operation last Tuesday. We just flew a hydrogen-fueled airplane in Moses Lake and a battery-powered airplane in Moses Lake, and we are rocking it when it comes to our new energy companies in our state. So we are united together in dealing with the climate crisis. But we are most intensely united in the effort to stand with the people of Ukraine. I'll just say simply, Washington State stands with the people of Ukraine, and Washington State stands with the people of Finland, who have been so courageous and so dedicated to this joint civilized effort to stand for democracy in Ukraine. And I expressed to the President our understanding that for a relatively small nation, Finland has stepped up to the plate big time, and other countries have joined them, and I'm very appreciative of that. I'm appreciative of President Biden's leadership that has led the Western countries to be united in this regard. And now we are very excited about Finland's joining other countries in NATO. And I will just say this, Russia doesn't have anything to fear from NATO. They do have something to fear from Vladimir Putin. And we have to succeed in making sure that the Ukrainian people are the ones who decide their own destiny in the Ukraine. I hope that I can convey to Finland that the people of state of Washington's efforts to stand for the people of Ukraine is undiminished, it is unfailing, and it is undivided. Mr. President, I gave a State of the State to the same group you addressed a couple months ago, and the number one ovation I received is when I said Washington stands with Ukraine. And I think I can report to you that we are going to be there with you to see this through, as is the United States. So I am very appreciative of the President being here. Mr. President, I look forward to your comments, and then we're going to stand for some very easy and gentle questions from our press here. Thank you, Mr. President.
So, Mr. Governor, thank you very much. We have been a couple of days here, and I have to say that we have felt from the very beginning a lot home-like. And I don't mean just forests, the nature, which is very similar than in Nordic countries, but also people and how we can exchange our views and actually find out that our values, our traditions, and our mindset about the world, about life, are very similar. So it's kind of easy to discuss here in Washington about important issues. Mr. Governor, you took up the expression forerunner, and we have strongly understood that Washington is a forerunner in combating the climate change and in many other issues too. We also feel that we have, well, woken up very early and trying to do our best. Sometimes I see that people are a bit afraid that, well, if you concentrate to how to stop the climate change, that might have an impact in your household incomes or something like that. It seems to be totally upside down. There are a lot of possibilities if you know how. And now we have met, I have quite a large Finnish delegation from main Finnish companies, and they have good meetings ongoing and continuing. So I'm sure that we find here, in a way, double return. That is, that we can work together to stop the climate change and having a modern business which is doing good things together by comparing our experiences and exchanging also our understandings and our technologies as much as possible. So that's one element. We have a lot to do together. I mentioned already forests. Well, we have seen a lot of them here, and in Finland we also have, and somehow forests are, their importance is getting higher all the time, but how to use them in a new way so that we can utilize the positive element that forests give to climate change, and on the other hand, using material in a sustainable way. This is also, I guess, one of the sectors where our cooperation could continue and develop. Then Mr. Governor, you mentioned the warfare in Ukraine. I have to tell you that people of my generation and younger generations in Europe are in a way shocked, because the thinking during the decades has been that everything goes always into a bit better and better, and we are totally safe. And this kind of thinking, well, Putin has broken it totally. That has also been seen in Europe, that we haven't been that prepared for this kind of crisis. Then I have to make one exception at least, and that is Finland, because our history and the lessons from history have taught us that you must never be afraid, but you have always to be awake. And that's why we still have conscription. We are buying, for example, jet fighters, F-35s, 64 of them, which is very much in taking notice to the size of Finland. So, and I want to emphasize, like I said to you, Mr. Governor, that it has been very important that USA has taken a leading role in helping Ukraine, and that is badly needed also in the future. It was very good to hear your opinion on that, and we have full belief on American participation. We have to build up peace together. That's number one. So I think that, well, I'm very much pride about the fact that I heard that I'm the first state's leader visiting wonderful state of Washington. It's a great honor for me, and I will never forget it. And I'm sure that my wife, when she has now written her book, becomes more curious about Washington too. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you. Happy to stand for questions. I'm going to let this gentleman recognize him here.
We have time for 4 questions. We'll start with 2 from the Finnish press. No, just
We'll restate your question. Oh, here we are. We got a mic here. Who's asking?
Tommi Koivunen, Ilta-Sanomat. My question would be for the President. You mentioned the fighters, and my question is, there's been reports about the U.S. trying to persuade Turkey to accept Finnish and Swedish NATO memberships as a condition for the F-16 fighter jet sales. How do you view the situation, and is this topic discussed during your trip to the U.S.?
First of all, we have got a lot of support from USA government and the President himself. We have also got a lot of support from existing other NATO members, not specifically from Turkey. But it's very clear that under discussion is now Finnish, Swedish membership and ratification of our when we applied membership. And I have understood and totally understand and accept the position of USA that yes, we negotiate on that ratification and don't mix up anything else in that. I'm very pleased with the support we have received, and we continue. I told earlier on today that I'm optimistic, and I believe that when we have meeting in Vilnius in July, then both Finland and Sweden will be members.
Hello, I'm Saara Kokkonen from the Finnish news agency. I have a question for the President. You have said that you will ratify the national NATO law right after the Parliament has passed the law. When will this happen, and are there any factors that might affect the schedule? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I haven't had a possibility of signing that legislation yet because I'm here. But our next meeting with the government is, if I remember correctly, 23rd of March. We may also have extra meetings before that, so it's in a way flexible. But what I have said is that I will sign that legislation before we have parliament elections, and I keep that. There has been a bit of discussion whether there would be a Finnish delay so that Sweden gets its own legislation accepted, and that will take place, I guess, in the nearby future, in a couple of weeks' time, 3, maybe, I don't know exactly the date. I have nothing against that we, in a way, have approximately similar date, but I don't believe and I don't feel that it is of utmost importance here. The most important is that our legislation in both Sweden and Finland is there.
Mr. President, if I may offer just an observation about your NATO membership. We feel in Washington State that your joining NATO and Sweden's joining NATO is not just a geopolitical or geographic asset for the state of Washington, but it empowers us to defend democracy itself. And we look at that is what is at stake in this war. We believe that your ascension to NATO is a very much pro-democracy movement. We've seen democracy under attack in my country domestically, as you know, and that has led us to stand with the Finnish people in joining NATO. So good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, modern conflicts often happen far away from American citizens. The Ukraine war has been going on for more than a year now. If you were to sit down at a kitchen table with an American family talking about why they should pay attention and continue to tune in this, what would you share from your experience and from Finland's experience?
Well, first of all, we are all human beings, and if we see other people being killed, tortured, children, whatever, we have feelings. Then let's take a more structural issue. That is that, like Mr. Governor said, our membership in NATO is for democracy. Well, the fight in Ukraine is for democracy too, and we can't forget that if an autocratic system would win somewhere, it never stops. After one win, it might be another win. So, in American household, it is important that the world keeps on developing with democracy and values which are mostly of emphasizing human attitude and feelings, because that's a key word. And we have to keep in mind that a household here is not that far away, actually, from a household in Finland or a household in Ukraine. The world is getting all the time smaller and smaller, and we are more and more dependent on what happens elsewhere, if not exactly in our neighborhood, but nevertheless, that has an impact always.
Joe, if I may add something from a Washington perspective, state perspective, gravity is fixed, and nobody thinks it's at risk. but democracy is not fixed, and democracy is at risk. And the attack on democracy that's going on in Ukraine right now, to some degree, is similar to the attack on January 6th on U.S. Capitol. That there is alive, unfortunately and well, on the planet, efforts to diminish the sanctity of democracy. And at least in my view, and I think the state of Washington, that's why Washingtonians are standing so strongly for the people of Ukraine, in addition to the recognition of the courage that they've seen from Zelensky and the whole Ukrainian people. So I think that's what's at stake, and that's why Washington State is so committed to standing with Finland and Ukraine.
Governor Inslee, my question is for you. What are some meaningful policies that you can take? And President of Finland, you can feel free to answer as well. I mean, you guys will be ending, 75 years of neutrality if your application to NATO is approved.
You mean in regard to Ukraine or more broadly?
Regarding Ukraine.
So we can do quite a number of things in Washington State. First, we can help the refugees from Ukraine. And I think there's something like 16,000 people that Finland has taken in, and we are probably the second or third largest recipient of refugees from Ukraine. And I want to give credit to the personal efforts of Washingtonians who have stood to help people with food and shelter and clothing. We want to thank everyone who's helped the Ukrainian refugees who are now in Washington State. And I think we are the third, as I recall, largest number of refugees in our state. So we're doing something domestically right here. Second, we have sent a considerable degree of supplies from Washington State. I was there for the first airlift a few months ago, leaving, I can't remember, it was a 757 or 767, full of equipment that came from Washington State. And third, we can use our voices in our democratic system to continue our policy of supporting Ukraine. And that's important too. As governor, I'm trying to stand as strongly as I can to continue to espouse those views. And what I shared with the president is you'll hear this little chattering from the back benches sometimes from one of our parties saying that somehow we should, cut and run in Ukraine. And I just assured the president that those are tiny little chit-chat that is not going to change the fundamental course of the United States. And I believe that very, very strongly. So I assured him that the sort of palaver you might hear on cable news networks sometimes is not expressing the will of the United States. And people in Washington, we can speak. And that's important in this regard to continue this moral and pro-democracy movement.
Any final comments?
The neutrality you mentioned, we never called us neutral. Actually, being a member of the European Union, we are far away from neutrality. We were politically aligned. We called us militarily non-aligned so far, not anymore. But that didn't mean that we wouldn't have a very keen cooperation with NATO as an enhanced partner. We had a straight connection to USA all the time going on for decades. What happened is that when Russia announced by Putin saying that NATO can't enlarge anymore, not to their borders, actually he took from us a part of our, would I say, sovereignty by telling that, no, you can't do that. And that was, in a way, the start point that we realized that we have to do something else otherwise than so far. And then when the attack appeared, it was clear that a huge majority of Finns wanted to join NATO. And I just want to tell you that in our parliament, 94% of members of parliament last spring decided that yes, we have to apply for membership. And a better figure we find only in US Senate. They had 95% of senators calling us in.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kitos, you've sent us 2 of your great hockey players to the Kraken.
Yep.
Next time we talk, send us more. Kitos.
Kiitos. And have a good sauna.
Yeah.
The governor. It's